Hi, welcome to my channel and thank you for tuning in for my review of the first episode of the new Loki TV series, Glorious Purpose. I'll be giving a quickish recap and then some of my thoughts. Let's get straight into it. Loki is the third post-Endgame TV series released on Disney+. So far they have been independent of each other and Loki does not seem likely to change this, although that said, it does look like Loki might be the one that is setting up for future films, more specifically Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. The episode picks up where we left Loki off in Endgame, grabbing the Tesseract to escape, and no sooner has Loki been forcefully deposited in the Gobi Desert is he up on a rock giving his whole glorious purpose spiel to some rather unimpressed locals. Credit for a quick recovery and staying on message though. He's interrupted by the arrival of the Minutemen from the Time Variance Authority. Basically, time cops, who have a much more boring and functional portal than the one for the Tesseract, which does kind of fit with the more bureaucratic nature. His confrontation with them does not go well, and we see the first of a handful of bits of tech that they have that added together felt like a bit too convenient of a way to overpower him. The lead Minuteman, Hunter B-15, puts the next of these, a time twister collar, on him before he is manhandled through the portal. Another Minuteman places a reset charge to reset the timeline. He's shuffled through various unfeeling bureaucracies in a pretty funny sequence, and is frankly understandably belligerent until he sees another prisoner killed for not cooperating, which persuades him to keep his mouth shut. For a few minutes at least. This is Loki we're talking about. During this, he finally gets some information from a 50s X welcome video explaining that the TVA was created to enforce the sacred timeline, which was created by the Timekeepers after they stopped a multiversal war. Anytime someone stops off the proper path of time, they correct it. Loki is not convinced. At this point we get the title card and then jump to 1549 France, where more Minutemen and Mobius, who basically appears to be a detective to their officers, are investigating the murder of one of their teams, saying it is him. Mobius is notably the first person from the TVA who we have seen show much compassion or humanity, as demonstrated when they are interrupted by a young girl. This is also when they establish that they have a limited time frame in which to stop a branch of the timeline. They refer to it as the Red Line. Mobius has brought Loki's file, showing that he's been apprehended, which his colleague thinks that he would want to know. Jump back to Loki in front of a judge, charged with crimes against the sacred timeline, and is asked how he pleads. After a bit of grandstanding, he pleads not guilty, pointing at the Avengers as the real culprits. Which, to be fair, based on the information he's got, reasonable assumption. Time travel does kind of seem like the thing that they would be against. However, the judge tells him that what the Avengers did was meant to happen, but his escape was not. He tries and fails to use his magic. For those counting, this is the third weirdly convenient way they have neutralized him, and she sentenced him to be reset. The TVA seem to have a number of these bland terms for killing people. Later we will see them use pruning. However, Mobius steps in and saves him, despite the judge's misgivings. They have a walk and talk, with Mobius again acting like a person. Loki is not a fan of the idea of 3 space lizards controlling everyone's fate, which, same. Mobius reveals he specialises in hunting particularly dangerous variants, a group he doesn't consider Loki, or at least this Loki, part of. He offers to help Loki if Loki answers some questions, which as it plays out is him trying to get past Loki's masks. He shows Loki some highlights from his life, which include the reveal that Loki was D.B. Cooper. He reminds Loki that he has a rather unfortunate habit of losing for someone who is supposed to rule. And he asks more than once what turns out to be the key question. Do you enjoy hurting people? But he also shows Loki some of the future, including how his actions will lead to his mother's death. This is the first time we see a real reaction from Loki to what is going on. He is furious, insisting it's a trick and wanting to know what they've done with his mother. This is the first crack in his armour. Loki is left alone briefly and proves that he is actually smart as he manages to lift the controller, escape, and track down the Tesseract all in short order. This, however, causes him to pause when he finds the Tesseract is thrown into a drawer with a whole pile of other Infinity Stones. The TVA apparently get so many of them, they use them as paperweights. Which does beg the question, are the Infinity Stones especially prone to creating nexus points? Loki is starting to think that maybe the TVA might be as powerful as they claim. He is nearly caught and escapes back to the meeting room, watches some more of his future, some emotional points between him, Thor and Odin, which see him genuinely affected, and finally his death. At this point, his masks definitely seem to be dropping. Hunter B-15 catches up with him and he manages to remove his collar and put it onto her. He then plays with it a bit, zipping her back and forth. He may get his revenge here, but honestly does not look all that happy about it. By the time Mobius returns, Loki seems to have realised that he can't go back. Then Loki finally answers the question in what to me was the most powerful moment of the episode. I don't enjoy hurting people. I don't enjoy it. I do it because I have to, because I've had to. And then he repeats something he said earlier about the TVA, but this time referring to himself. Because it is part of the illusion. It is the cruel, elaborate trick conjured by the weak to inspire fear. Mobius is clearly happy to see that Loki does know himself and says he wants Loki's help catching the fugitive variant who he's been chasing, revealing that the variant is in fact Loki himself. The final scene takes us to 1858 Oklahoma, where what is implied to be the variant Loki, but notably whose face is never shown, kills several more Minutemen by setting them on fire. And that was our episode. So, a lot to unpack there. I didn't realise until the episode ended that a huge chunk of it was purely exposition. It had been done so seamlessly, I just didn't notice till we got to the end. I was really surprised when the episode finished because it didn't feel like it'd been 40 minutes. You know, we were given a lot of new information, but it was done so well and worked into the story that it didn't drag or feel boring. Now, a few smaller thoughts, observation, questions before I get to kind of the meat and potatoes. It felt like they recapped Endgame more than they had to, over a minute's worth. As funny as the scene in the penthouse is, and as much as I could watch Chris Evans playing Loki, playing a parody of Steve all day, I don't see what that communicated to the audience that furthered the story in any way. It's not going to catch up anyone who hadn't seen Endgame, and just the scene downstairs is going to be enough to kind of remind the rest of us, you know, where we left off. Which does make me wonder if this moment is going to become relevant again. There was a lot of focus on the moment of timeline divergence, on the nexus point. Will we be back here again? Could this end right where we started? So, I have to wait and see, but I think we might be seeing that scene again. I've said it before, but I'll say it again. I love what they did with the title sequence. Just stunning. My interpretation is that it was kind of different typefaces through the ages, past and future. It was a very simple idea, just beautifully executed, really fantastic design work. I was very impressed. The TVA, well, they're the epitome of lawful evil bureaucracy. It seems pretty clear that they're going to be the villain of the series. What I'm interested to find out is whether or not they are on the level. Are they really trying to prevent another multiversal war? Which is a laudable aim, even if their methods leave a little to be desired. Or is it all a front for something else? And could all this stuff with Loki still be part of the plan? On to variant Loki. Firstly, I'm not sure if it was how it was edited, but I think there might have been two people in that last scene. There was a bit where we could see someone picking up the reset charge at the same time we could see the hooded figure in the background. Now, as I said, it could just be weird editing, because sometimes they do that where you're actually seeing two things that are happening at different times interchanged, but they could be shown that there's two people involved. If the variant there was Loki, why not show his face? That screams that either it's not really Loki or there's some other big reveal that they're concealing so far. I've seen both the idea of kid Loki and female Loki suggested. It does seem he's collecting the reset charges, which, means the murders may well be a means to an end, which fits with his character. and makes me wonder if Variant Loki's plans are going to be part of the setup for the next Doctor Strange movie. The other big question with Variant Loki is, when is he from? From what point in Loki's timeline? Is it from the past? Could it be a variant from his future, which seems less likely? Could it in fact be this variant of Loki, this very variant of Loki, but just further on along in his timeline? I think that's going to be a key question they're going to need to answer, and I'm looking forward to. It does look like Loki is following on from WandaVision and The Falcon and the Winter Soldier with tackling some pretty heavy themes. These aren't your typical popcorn movie superhero adventures. You know, they're getting into some real stuff here. Primary theme being set up is about the idea of fate versus free will, with Loki believing absolutely that his choices are his own, and the Timekeepers believing that everything should be preordained. I'm interested to see how that plays out. You know, if the TVA enforce their proper timeline by destroying any variant, does that mean there was no free will? If the timeline where you make the choices reset later, did you still make that choice? Loki made the choice to escape. Even if it had been reset, it happened. Do your choices count if they don't have consequences? There's a lot they could explore there. I also think there might be a secondary theme of identity. This episode was very focused on who Loki was, from joking about him knowing if he was a robot to his admissions about himself later. He's someone who has hid his true self behind masks for so long. Does he even know who he is anymore? Also, it seems that none of the TVA employees have lives outside their jobs, and it's implied they were created to do that job. If you exist purely to do your job, what does that mean for your identity? The Minutemen don't even have names, just designations. What are the odds that Casey is just a nickname based off a designation? They clearly have personalities, they are people, but how much identity do they have? And with all those points out the way, on to the centre of the episode, which was the interaction between Loki and Mobius, which I loved every moment of. Just every moment, I was there. We get so much insight into Loki's character, plus some actual time to get to know Mobius, which, you know, isn't always common in this kind of environment. We get a much more slow-paced introduction rather than, you know, meeting him and being thrown directly into the action. Mobius's questions are trying to get at why Loki does what he does. He knows what he's looking for and is pushing to see if he can find it. Loki. Loki, Loki, Loki. Every time he gives that speech about freedom, I wonder if he really believes it, or if it's just the lie he tells himself to justify his actions. It is just so rehearsed. Who are you trying to convince there, Loki? Because I think it might be yourself. You know, when Mobius says, "You want to be king," Loki answers, "I don't want to, I was born to." This could be read as pure arrogance, but I'm not convinced it is, because that fits with how we know he was raised. Honestly, it's not too far from where Thor was when we first met him. You know, he was raised with that expectation, only to find out it was all a lie. I mean, we've actually seen what he does when he gets to rule, and it's not exactly what you'd expect from the performance he's putting on. He seems to want to be king just for the sake of being king, not because he wants to do anything with the power. How much of this is about Odin? And man, did that guy really mess up his kids. How much is him just trying to prove that he is as worthy as Thor, trying to get his father's approval? You know, Mobius says you were born to cause pain and suffering and death, all so that others could achieve the best versions of themselves. And it might seem cruel, but it's true. That is literally what his purpose in the story has been so far. It is a harsh truth that Loki needs to come to terms with. And then we come to the big moment. Loki admitting that he doesn't enjoy hurting people, that it is all just a facade, doing what he has to. What does it do to a child who doesn't enjoy violence to grow up in a militaristic society that reveres it, to constantly be compared to the brother admired for his skills as a warrior, to be the one better equipped to rule, pushed aside for the brother whose defining characteristic is his ability to fight? What room is there for Loki in that world? Now, that doesn't negate what he's done or absolve him of responsibility, but it's not all that surprising that he chose the path he did. He couldn't be himself, and he could never compete with Thor. What could he do to earn respect in that world? But the big question is, was he being genuine, or was this another one of his tricks? This is Loki we're talking about. He is very good at faking exactly this kind of thing. We've seen it before. Short answer, I'm pretty sure it was real. Firstly, it felt real. From the way it was played, to how it fit in the narrative of the episode, how it followed on from his reactions when he was alone. It felt genuine. But secondly, if they try and take this back, they are going to lose their audience. Loki, as the trickster who you never know is telling the truth, works as an antagonist, works really well as an antagonist, but it doesn't work with a protagonist, unless the audience is in the know. You can make it work if the audience knows. If you can't trust that what you're seeing of a character is real, you can't connect with that character. It's hard to enjoy a character when you never know what is true or not, and any moment you like can be twisted later on. It also does the job of getting us from Avengers Loki to post-Ragnarok Loki, more or less. Honestly, I was expecting some kind of timey-wimey thing where being removed from the timeline would give him all his memories. This was much better. Mobius basically gave him a crash course version of 3 films worth of character development in the space of 20 minutes. And it was such an amazingly powerful moment, which would be completely undercut by making it a trick. So, I think it was real. Don't prove me wrong, show. I have faith in you. I believe in you. We can do this. As for Mobius, I do think he was more or less on the level. I doubt he was being completely forthright for obvious reasons, and he was definitely manipulating Loki, but it felt as if he genuinely liked him and believed he was capable of more. He was pushing to see if he was right and making sure that Loki wasn't so deep under his mask that he couldn't acknowledge the truth. I have seen some people say that Mobius was being cruel or even torturing Loki, and that just wasn't what I saw. I saw empathy and understanding. I saw Mobius pushing Loki to realise he is better than he thinks he is. And Mobius seemed so happy to find out he was right. Now, in an understated way, he doesn't seem like the type who's going to jump up and down in excitement, but he was definitely happy. And I don't think that was just about needing his help. I am living for this dynamic between them and looking forward to seeing where they go with it. Fingers crossed, they are setting up what they look like they are setting up. So, overall, I really enjoyed the episode. If that wasn't obvious, impatiently waiting for episode 2. What did you think? What questions are you desperately waiting for the answers for? Let me know in the comments down below, and I will see you next week. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button and consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell so you know when I post the next one. Until then, have a good one. Bye.